We were talking about the relationship between ecstasy as a physiological experience and as a neurophysiological phenomenon, and the relationship of ecstasy to the alternate reality. And we had placed that in a context of the societal type and how things shifted in each society in terms of how people related to the alternate reality. I would like to ask you to talk a little bit about the term alternate reality. You use it matter-of-factly, and I know that some people don't know what you're talking about, or they have an understanding of it that's very different from the popular, from the way that you use it. The popular understanding is very different from how you use it.
The alternate reality, first of all, is the range of the sacred. That's, I think, understood cross-culturally. It is another aspect of reality, which, of course, runs counter to the Western urbanite idea that there is only one reality. Don't ever ask them, however, to define reality, because that can't be done. The Western thinkers since the Greeks tried to define reality, and they have made a botch of it. Nobody can really tell. The problem is that we know from looking at ourselves that we really can't see anything out there. What we see is what is reflected through our senses. And the idea that you often encounter is, well, you know, ordinary reality is what I can smell and touch and see and hear, and the other reality doesn't have all of that. It's not that simple, because also in the alternate reality, we don't just see, but we hear and smell and touch and feel. So that's no good criterion. So we have to be satisfied getting at the matter in the opposite way. We have to say, if our bodies change in this particular way, remember there are other types of altered states where the body goes through different changes. If the body changes in this particular way, which is the same strategy all around the globe, then we are capable of seeing a different dimension of the general reality. So that's one way of getting at it. Now, what we notice when we compare religious systems around the world is, to put it in a very simple way, the alternate reality is furnished differently with various types of societies. The alternate reality of the hunter-gatherer, or the gatherer-hunter, which you prefer, which I like, is a world in which there is a lower world where the animal spirits live, and for many, the realm of the spirits of the dead is in the lower world. There's a middle world where humans live, but humans, again, live with spirits in the middle world also, in a kind of a transformed kind of reality when they are capable of seeing it. And then there's the upper world, and I just found a beautiful Ojibwe quotation where they say that the upper world is the home of the rainbow and the music and the musical instruments. So there is this division into three, which takes us back to a very ancient cosmology, which is the tree of the world, where the lower world is around the branching of the roots of the tree, and the middle trunk is the middle world where people live with their spirits, and the upper world is where the spirits of the air live. So it is not simple to say, well, you know, if you pass this ocean and you go through that customs barrier, then you are in country X. But rather, it's almost as if ordinary reality were one aspect which floats in a much larger area. Just talking with you now recalls to mind something that Castaneda reports of Don Juan, where he talks about the Nahual and the Tonal, much misunderstood in his manuscript, and basically exactly what I'm saying now, that the Tonal is that small island of ordinary reality that floats in a tremendous sea of the non-ordinary reality, which he calls the Nawal.
Felicitas, now we've talked about ecstasy, we've talked about ritual, the context in which ecstasy must occur, and we've talked about the alternate reality, which is the experience that's established by the bridge that's provided with the neurophysiological stimulation. You've talked about that term, stimulation. You discovered that that was the key that was almost as important on a physiological level as ritual is on the level that ritual occurs in terms of the religious experience. Would you talk about what you discovered about trance and about religious trance in 1977?
I had discovered how a person looks in trance, that there is such a physiological change. I had isolated that physiological change from the Pentecostal dogma of possession by the Holy Spirit. I had discovered that there was no causal relationship between the physiological changes and the religious experience, and I didn't know where to go from there. There was an article in the literature which then came in 1976 in the fall from Erika Bourguignon again, where the author pointed out that as far as meditation was concerned, certain concepts changed if people meditated in different body postures. And this was a revelation to me. Not meditation, because meditation is a quieting down of the nervous system and telling the nervous system, do not accept any stimuli from the outside. The religious trance is induced by entirely different strategies where you are aroused by stimulation from the outside, but the role of the posture was not known.
And Felicitas, would you talk a little bit about stimulation? You keep using that term, and I think that we could be very specific about what you mean by stimulation.
In this case, I mean by stimulation, rhythmic stimulation. A rhythmic sound that can be clapping, singing, drumming, rattling. Once when somebody was very curious to find out what I was doing, I had him come up to my hotel room, and I gave a rhythmic stimulation by hitting the edge of the table with a pencil. Even that works sometimes. So that's what I mean by rhythmic stimulation. And the postures are never described in the literature ever in connection with religious ritual. Nobody says, in this ritual, this particular person holds his arms here and his legs there, and so forth. It's just not paid any attention to. Even archaeologists who should know better will group different body postures on the same page and then say, this is all arms on chest. And I recognize it as 5 different postures. And I went to a German publication, the first one I even touched, and immediately I found postures. And that they were of a religious nature was clear from the context. For example, there was a picture of a shaman with a bear spirit that could not be misunderstood. And then with volunteers and with summer money from Denison University, I had them assume this posture, and I did the rattling, this rhythmic stimulation, and to my total surprise, what happened was that they had visions. All of a sudden, what I had been yearning for, looking for all along, appeared out of nowhere.
You just used another term which is popularly misunderstood. You used the term visions. Would you talk about that before you go on to discuss the postures further?
What I define vision as is more inclusive than just seeing. I understand vision to be all the senses. In other words, if you walk past a certain place and all of a sudden, especially that happens outside, all of a sudden there's a fragrance that does not belong there. That's a vision. A vision in the sense that you are perceiving something that belongs to the alternate reality. So any perception by the senses where you can find as a rational human being that that was not ordinary reality stimulus is included under the term vision. Mm-hmm. So it can be hearing, mm-hmm. or seeing, or smelling, or touching, mm-hmm. anything. like that.
Let's go back to that time when you assembled the group of people and you rattled in the rhythm of the deer dance that you learned from the Pueblo Indians. You later learned was the rhythm of the Pueblo Indians. And people went into trance and experienced visions. Would you talk about what happened in your life and in the life of discovering the postures from that point on?
Well, first of all, what happened was that I began to realize that each posture had its own domain. That eventually I would discover that there were postures for spirit journeys, for healing, for guiding the spirits of the dead to the other side, for metamorphosis into other shapes, such as mainly animals or also plants. And I began to research this aspect. I was close to retirement. I was forced to retire, and I resented that. Now I'm grateful for it. In 1979, I founded an institute in New Mexico in order to have an institutional affiliation for research, and it became the center eventually for research and for teaching others. So instead of being bracketed out of teaching and of research by being forcibly retired, the opposite happened. My research and my teaching activity took off in a way which I never anticipated. So I hope to be able to do this for many years to come.